Welcome back to Elevate Inspiration for Sunday School. Look here, we're still in our love series. This Sunday, we're going to be talking about confident love. Hey, I'm excited about this. So let's jump into our lesson. Now, if you notice, we're still in the love series, and we're still looking at John. John is an author that not only writes the Gospel of John, but he writes 1st, 2nd, and 3rd John, and he also writes Revelation. Now, it is believed that he kind of writes these books within a period of towards the end of his life, around 80 AD 90. We're looking at between 80 and 90 years after the death of Christ. Remember now, John is the last of the 12 original disciples. By this time, when he writes the book, scholars believe that he's the pastor of the Ephesian church, the church that was established by Apostle Paul about 50 years earlier. So he, in this book of 1st John, he is combating false teaching. He's emphasizing the interconnection of right belief, right actions, and right love in his epistle. Okay, so let's jump right into it. We're at 1st John, the 3rd chapter, and looking at verses 11 through 15. He talks about love from the beginning. And this is the message that you've heard from the beginning, that we love one another. You know, this is his theme in his writing, especially in the Gospel of John, and especially in 1st John, even 2nd and 3rd John. He's always focusing on that word love. And then he goes all the way back to the original brothers, Abel and Cain. Notice he says, not as Cain, who was of that wicked one and slew his brother. So we know the jealousy and how jealousy originated in the two brothers that led to one hating the other, and to the point that Cain killed Abel. And then he says on the 13th verse, please look at, I underline the 13th verse. He says, marvel not, my brethren, if the world hate you. You know, that is really interesting. If you hate your brothers and sister in the faith, you are bad in death. Notice the next verse. For we know that we have passed from death unto life because we love the brethren. So just the opposite. If you don't love your brother, you actually are bad in death. This is the death which is spiritual separation from God. And this is what John is warning his fellow believers, is that if you hate one another, you've actually have died. And that is a spiritual death where you are spiritually separated from God. And then we have the 16th verse, imitate Jesus. And look at that 16th verse. Hereby perceive we the love, there's that word again, of God, because he laid down his life for us, and we ought to lay down our lives for our brethren. And then we look at the demonstration of love in this verse here. It says, but whosoever hath this world good, and sees his brother have need, and shut up his bowels of compassion from him, how dwelleth the love of God in him? So in other words, if you have material things and you are not able to relinquish your material things to help your brother, where is the love? Because he focuses there, notice I underline the words, We love not in word, not in tongue, but we actually show love in deed and in truth. So the question that I want you to think on is this, and this is a question we're going to discuss on Sunday. How will you explain to someone that 1 John 3:16 is just as important to memorize as John 3:16? And I bet you know what John 3:16 says. But when we look at 1 John 3:16, it says, hereby perceive we the love of God, because he laid down his life for us, and we ought to lay down our lives for our brethren. So how will you explain to someone the importance of memorizing both of those scriptures? And then we're going to dig a little bit deeper by asking the question and discussing the answer. How will your explanation to a fellow believer different from your explanation to an unbeliever, if there's any difference at all, and why? And then as we look at 1 John, the 3rd chapter, verses 19 to 24, you're going to notice here of the heart. That is so unique here when we think about the heart, because John says in that 20th verse, for if our heart condemn us, God is greater than our heart and knoweth all things. So the heart, if the heart actually is condemning, then God is greater than your heart. Now, pay attention to our heart, but not as an infallible guide. The heart in biblical thought is not simply the center of emotions. The heart is the source of our deepest impulse, our motivation, our free will decision. It is where we make choices. Now, think about that for a few minutes. Think about the choices that you've made. Many times we realize that we make wrong decisions because we are following our heart. And what he's saying here, for if our heart condemn us, God is greater. So we know he have already condemned us. And then if you notice of action, notice in that verse there, this is his commandment, that we should believe on the name of his son, Jesus Christ. And there it is again, and love one another as he had gave us a commandment. You see, if your heart does not condemn us, does not resist in helping the needy with acts of love, we should feel confident in our relationship with God, because our heart is telling us to love. It's telling us to keep that commandment. So, there's evidence required when we have love. John insists we cannot make a credible claim to loving God if we hate other people. That is really timing, especially during this political year. How can we hate our brother and still say we love God? Jesus Christ's heart of love resulted in his willing sacrifice as the Lamb of God to take away the sins of the world. And we know that while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. So I ask you this question. What does the evidence of your lives reveal about your secrets of your heart? What evidence? What do you see actually that can tell us about your heart? Hey, I thank you all. Our thought to remember is loving God is shown by loving people. Hey, I'm going to see you in Sunday school. We're going to have a discussion. I have the question right here, and we're going to discuss this on Sunday at 6 p.m. So here's the Zoom setting meeting and the meeting ID and passcode. Hey, it's been great, you all. We had a great lesson. Like I said, we're still in the love series, and loving God is shown by loving people. So I encourage you this week, take time out and look at what your heart is saying to you. And are you really following your heart? Are you really making God proud of you for what you are doing? Hey, thank you all. It's been great. See you in Sunday school.